she passes it on. I'd like for us to sort of finish up with
ding, 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 ding.
With last time's lesson, and it occurred to me that we ended up with what is the work of God, and we've been thinking about what is the work of humans, and why do we respect some jobs and some vocations more than others, and is that according to what Scripture says, or is that according to our bias and how much money quite often the job pays? So we tend to want our children to be able to support themselves. I mean, that's a realistic kind of thing. But we also want them to have a job that has meaning, and we want to have meaning ourselves in what we do. And so one thing that occurred to me was that Jesus gave a prescription for what we should be doing, and I'd like for us to think about what that prescription is. What question did Jesus ask Peter? Not one time, not two times, but three times.
I don't remember the question, I don't remember the answer.
What was the question?
I don't remember the question, I only remember the answer. I remember the
So
answer.
do you love me?
Do you love me?
Yes.
Did you ever ask that of your children?
They've been very bad.
If you loved me, would you do that? That kind of thing. Well, Jesus asked three times. If you ask a question more than once, it must mean something important to you, right?
Asked him 3 times, did
He asked him three times. And of course, what was Peter's answer?
Of course I would.
You know that.
Okay, this is, so when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? And Peter said to him, yes, Lord, you know I love you. And Jesus said to him, feed my lambs. He said to him again a second time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, tend my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Peter was grieved. I think that means that Peter was saying, why are you doing this? Because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And Peter said to him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Okay, so what does that mean to us?
Gifted the poor.
Carry on my message.
Take care of the poor.
Care for
the poor.
Care for the poor. Who were Jesus' sheep?
The poor.
The poor, the downtrodden, the ones who needed help.
Yeah.
Sheep also go wherever people lead. Sometimes they don't think or go the right place. It's whoever's in front.
Do we just follow the crowd? Or do we listen for instructions? Or do we just set out on our own journey? What's the difference in feed my sheep and tend my sheep?
Tend may be reaching the emotional needs of people, whereas feed may be reaching the
That whole process is, he's asking for different levels of commitment. You can say, for instance, do you love me? Yes, I do. He says, okay, feed my sheep, in other words. Live a good life, make sure that you don't do any bad influences on people. Then he says, tend my sheep. He says, okay, now you're going to be the shepherd. Then if you have another level of commitment, are you going to be a pastor? This is just a question. Something where you actually are going to take a different level of commitment and make to actually propagate the way of Jesus, to show people be an example and show the way that you're going to live that life that Jesus is talking about. Love, at the Last Supper, the one thing, you have your favorite. My favorite is verse in the Bible is love one another as I have loved you. And that basically is Jesus' whole message.
Mm-hmm. And feed my sheep means send money to UNCOR to get food to people who may need it wherever they are, where we can't be. That's easy, right?
Yes, that's easy. Well, it's easier for some people than others.
Yeah.
You have to be careful.
But tend my sheep requires, as you said, a different level of commitment.
I think of tend as meaning protect and nurture.
And sometimes it might be work for the common good as well as a direct involvement with one person.
I might be stopping a bad guy that's coming to get my sheep.
Yeah.
And I may be over here and the sheep.
Right.
Okay.
You might see danger coming.
It's like
Speak
Ron
truth to
said,
power.
that protect, because if you think about the shepherd, when he feeds the sheep, he's just giving them sustenance. But when you think about tend my sheep, he's out there in the field keeping them predators away and making sure that they are protected. So I agree with the protection as much as anything.
Yeah, John, you made me think when you said pastors and so forth, because it seems to me that tend my sheep is primarily directed at all of us lay people. And in fact, we lay people, before I was pastor, are in a better position to tend the sheep than the pastor is.
Yes.
I also think about the fact that he's talking about fulfilling the roles of a shepherd, and I think about the social standing of a shepherd at that time period. They couldn't even testify in court; they were seen as so low. So, are you also willing to give up your social standing? Are you willing to give up comfort? Are you willing to go out into the wilderness?
Being a shepherd involves some dirty work.
Yeah.
I think it may also be about trying to embrace the sheep who have gone astray. I think sort of in the context right now of Florida, in many instances, other than Texas, I would venture to say Florida is probably the second conference of the United Methodist Church that's seen the most churches leave. and joined the Global Methodist Church, and also sort of stirred the pot even in North Carolina and the Western North Carolina Conference. Of course, right now we share a bishop with the Florida Conference, but Florida's been devastated by Hurricane Ian, and I think in the context of UMCOR, even though that is partly shared with the Global Methodist Church, this is a time that UMCOR can step up and continue to serve even those churches in those areas that may have left or may be seeking to leave the church.
And there are some statistical analyses that do point to an increase in the American population of what are considered to be nuns, not nuns like the Catholic nuns, but nuns, N-O-N-E-S, who do not profess to have any religious belief. And I happened on a newscast about Christian nationalism, and I had sort of been, that's not important. That's just something not to worry about your head about. So there is what appears to be a growth in what is called Christian nationalism. And as I understand it, which may not be correct, but it is a union between two different aims and belief systems, because in the First Amendment, which I would like to read to you, and by the way, the First Amendment was part of the Bill of Rights, and do you know who wrote that? I didn't until I looked it up, so. It was James Madison, and some of the states had only been willing to sign the Declaration of Independence if they knew there was a Bill of Rights coming, because they felt like that didn't address it. But the First Amendment is this, or what can you tell me about the First Amendment?
Government shall make no provision regarding religion, and it went on farther than that.
Yeah, there
Press,
Speech, not,
Okay.
assembly.
yeah.
Right. And the press, and to petition the government. So there's a whole lot of things in there that are really important. But the part that I want us to look at today is Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Which religion?
That's not stated.
So does that not mean any religion? Okay.
The government shall not endorse any particular religion, is basically what I.
Or prohibit.
Or prohibit another one from people from exercising another one, anyone.
Okay.
So they can't forbid it, and they can't, on the one hand, nor endorse it on the other hand. Endorse anyone.
So there should not be a state religion, should there?
Right. Well, that's a federal provision.
They've never quite called it.
Well, state,
And then you have to define religion.
Then you have to define religion. Is religion just organized groups?
But they
For
never-
them,
Well, what was religion in 1776?
Well, what did Jesus say about
Give to Caesar what Caesar.
loyalties? He said,
You have to see
Yeah,
what it
show me
says.
the image on the coin.
yeah.
Well, it's theirs. Let them have it. That's not what we're about.
So should there be a strict or at least an attempt to keep religion and politics separate?
Yes.
Well,
I think we're talking about two different things. One is the establishment of a particular religion with its doctrines.
Right.
That is prohibited. Most of the people in the new country had come from dissenting backgrounds, although the leadership had come from Church of England. And they had been burned by that establishment of religion. If that is meant to say the concerns and moral and ethical principles of your religion should not be a part of government, then that's not what the fathers meant. And I think it's real important. Your faith does have a place in the public square. Your denominational or, affiliation and the advancement of your denominational affiliation does not have a place in the public square.
And I'd like to look at, that's very important, that protects us from having what's called a state religion. But it seems that there are some movements now that would like to challenge that. And one place that you might like to look at is Moscow, Idaho. Those two, putting that Moscow, which is, this is strange to me. Idaho is one of those very, very far out rightist kinds of places. I have a brother-in-law who lives in Idaho, and it was a logical place for him to go. He's very, he was very much taken with Nazi memorabilia and the order and the uniformity that was established in Germany. And we never discussed any political things like that, but he ended up in Idaho. But there is another place in Idaho which is called Moscow, Idaho, which has a government that is, strangely enough, quite filled with people who want the church that they go to be everyone's church. So it's a curious thing, but people get tied up in knots about nationalism, about God and country. Is God on our side? Or maybe we should ask the question the other way. Are we on God's side?
Closer to home, we had a month and a half or 2 months ago on the streets of our county seat, a group of ministers proclaiming that they were going to, quote, take the county back for Christ. And what they meant by that was several things, but it was definitely a part of this movement, and it had to do with abortion, and it had to do with a number of other things. So this is not Idaho. This is Madison County, North Carolina, and we need to remember that.
And there is one hymn that I really like that we sing usually around the 4th of July. And the title of it is "This Is My Song."
Yeah.
And it goes like this: "This is my song, O God of all the nations, O God of all the nations." Could stop and think about that a little bit. Is your God big enough to be the God of all nations? A song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. This is where I grew up. These are the values that I have. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrines. I'm attached to this place. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. I love that hymn.
Now, what is the title of that hymn in terms of what is the,
Finlandia.
yes.
The what?
And that is
The
the
music that
national
goes with it.
anthem of Finland.
What's the title?
Finlandia.
Our handout choir plays a fault.
There are many words to that tune. Joel has asked Mary Ruth and Carol and I, until we can't, he would like for us to sing once more in our church. And it's funny that this came up because the hymn we are singing is to the tune of Finlandia, but it's different words than those. But it's very poignant words, you know, that go with the way we feel, the way we live, you know. And we are working on that song to do for the church one day before we can't.
Good. So it goes on to say, my country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and vine. But other lands have sunlight too and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine. So I get a bit uncomfortable when I see people waving the flag and spouting things that are anti-peaceful and are putting down other religions sometimes and other people.
What does Jesus, go ahead.
To go back to Wiley's point earlier about like Madison County and Christian Nationalist kind of vibes. Whenever I was searching for a new home church, and I won't, mention names, but this church is rather large. And I walked in and it felt more like an army recruiting center than a church. More time was spent on talking about the Thanksgiving for our local police force, for our local veterans, than it was on the scripture during like the service. And I was just like, oh, this is comfy.
Well, the church I grew up in was a Baptist country church, and they had the American flag and the Christian flag and any other flag that they could manage to drag in, that would be all up there.
Well, those used to be,
Yes.
right there.
Oh no, every vacation Bible school you had to say pledge allegiance to the flag, and then pledge allegiance to the Christian flag, and then pledge allegiance to the BBS flag, and half the time was spent pledging the flags. I don't.
So it's
I guess one thing that jumped out into my brain when we were starting talking about this And when you started reading that wonderful hymn, was Jesus' statement, I have sheep who are not of this fold. He was making a statement to the disciples that this isn't all about you. And as Methodists, part of our tradition is John Wesley's understanding that the world was his parish.
And
the
that is
fact-
so big that we feel immobilized by it.
Yeah, well, and the fact that, and I was just talking with a friend of mine the other day, came out of this county, black woman, who was amazed, did not know that this is not a Methodist church. This is a Methodist congregation. This is a congregation of the Methodist Church. The church is World Methodist Church, is worldwide,
But we don't talk in those terms.
as the Roman Catholic Church is. We have a different understanding of the Christian faith than is being expressed there.
And then, just as a side note, does it matter if our government officials are, do you want to know what your government officials' belief system is?
Yes.
I think so.
I don't know, I don't care about their.
I don't know about that.
Does it influence their action?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. It doesn't influence my vote. I vote for the person, not whether they are a Catholic or Jew or Protestant, but what I interpret from the media, I guess, what I read about their beliefs determines my vote. So, but this is very interesting what you've written here.
Well, the House of Representative, that means they are supposed to reflect the views of the constituents. We agree with that because they're elected by popular vote. So should we be careful to make sure that the voting process is open to representative populations and groups? Does that matter?
It does matter, but we've gotten to a point in our country that you have to be rather wealthy to run for these, especially the higher positions. And maybe the best man or woman is not running because they just can't afford it. But they might be the best person for the job, you know. But they are supposed to represent us.
But the system looks to me to be poorly implemented, I guess is what I should say. And I think we should be involved in trying to make sure that our polls are open to people and they are not being harassed in any way or turned away, and that we have careful kind of monitoring. Okay, so that's the House of Representatives. What's the difference in that in the senators?
In a way.
Senate.
The Senate represents the states rather than the people. So if you have a Wyoming, that state's gonna have a certain kind of population, in Idaho, California. They're supposed to represent the state.
The state being the land?
The people in the state.
But those people, by virtue of there being so few of them, have a bigger
Yes.
representation.
And that was done on purpose. They were afraid this wasn't gonna happen, this, they had the Articles of Confederation before they had the Constitution. And people like Delaware were very afraid, or Rhode Island were very afraid that the population centers of Massachusetts, Virginia, and New York were gonna dictate everything for everybody else in the country. And then Franklin weighed in on it, and they finally decided to keep both.
Okay, maybe I could accept that as being a valid argument, but then if we elect a president, should that not be by everyone's vote counting equally? So think about the Electoral College and what that does to equality of vote. So that's all of my civics lesson. But one other thing that I found interesting, the Supreme Court is made up of 9 people. Of those 9 people, 6 are Catholic, 2 are Protestant with some question about both that, and 1 is Jewish.
Talk about imbalance.
Yeah, and she's got it comparing it to the population, so.
And if you look at the population of the United States, 22%
Catholic.
Catholic, 45% are Protestant, 2% are Jewish, and now 21% are what they call nuns. Don't profess a religious belief.
What percentage is nuns?
21%.
Well, and you also have to think about the reasons this has happened. Catholics were challenged to prove that they were Americans. They were suspected of being enthralled to the Pope.
And the election
Some of the
JFK.
best law
Yes,
schools
yes.
in the United States were established by the Catholic Church. And some of the law schools with the most attention to government were established by the Catholic Church. And so you've got to look kind of twice. I agree, I think that's a problem. Your statistics are a problem. However, the Protestant churches, and I'm including for this purpose Church of England in this, but which is a real question about whether it's really Protestant, but including the Church of England, did not have that challenge and did not focus their educational efforts as much on A, law, and B, the government application of law. So you could argue that there are more Roman Catholic lawyers who are in public service because they were trained that this was really important and they understand it better. So, that's another factor here. I'm not saying that overcomes the problem,
And
but that's another factor.
there are good Methodists and there are bad Methodists, and there are good Catholics and there are bad Catholics. And I've known a lot of Catholics who never went to church, so.
Well, the two Protestants who are on the Supreme Court, one was raised Catholic and became an Episcopal, and the other one doesn't specify any denominational affiliation, just says that they're a non-Catholic Protestant, and that leaves you with a whole range of things there. So while I don't think that there should be litmus tests for candidates for various positions in government, I think we do need to pay attention to what people tell us. And some politician recently said, when I tell you who I am, you should believe me, you know. And sometimes we think, oh no, that's you're much better than that, or you're not going to do what you say you're going to do. You're just using that to get votes. But we've been burned several times by things. So there is some fear that our democracy is in peril. So make sure that you think about your responsibility as a citizen and your responsibility to vote.
And in North Carolina, I think I said this before, I apologize, no, I don't apologize, it bears repeating. This time, the elections to judgeship are the most important votes you're going to make.
That's a good segue into our meeting of the United Methodist Women. I'm still stuck on that, sorry. It's Tuesday, and we are going to have a speaker,
Dwight Smathers, who is with the Board of Elections in Madison County,
who will help us to understand the process of voting in Madison County and hopefully give us some ideas about the different positions that are being on the ballot and who the candidates might be, so that we can do our research and our due diligence to make sure that we have the understanding about what and who we were voting for. This was of real importance to me because I moved here and I know nobody. I know everybody's related to everybody else just about, but it seems like to me that the information is not so easy to get to impartially. So we need to do our, but we're going to be doing the vote cards. We're going to be putting on here what precinct the people will be voting in and where they will be voting. And we're going to hang them on door tags, these are door tags, in different areas throughout Madison County. So we will be asking people to volunteer to fill out different areas, and the Judys have agreed to help us. I have the information about where the voting polls are, but I don't have the information about the area.
Who is the we? You said we're going to do such and such.
Well, we're starting with the United Methodist Women, but anyone is welcome to the meeting.
I understand that.
And would be glad to, male or female, to have people participate in this because it's really important this time. And then
we'll give a very non-biased presentation. That I think he's a good speaker to do this.
We have 300 of these, so plenty for everybody.
Well, we sometimes use ignorance as an excuse. I don't know who stands for what. I don't know who these people are. Is that a good excuse?
Not in the day of Google.
Well, you know, it isn't, but I have a friend who moved here from San Diego, California. And he asks me, so tell me what site it is to go to get a rundown. I have looked all over the internet. I have to agree with Margaret. Not only for those of us who live here, but those who are coming into this area, and there are lots of them, you have to dig, and it shouldn't be that difficult. It just shouldn't.
And then sometimes the information is like put out there last minute.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it difficult to make those decisions.
Actually at the polling site, sometimes you will see people outside handing you little cheat sheets.
That's kind of like, I'm thinking of areas like Shelby Mall, where they get their news.
And
The
there's,
general store.
and there's a huge pool of people running for the congressional seat of former Madison Cawthorn. And I know one of them personally, and it kind of scares me that they're running. So, she's my former therapist who lost her license to practice. So let's just take that into account.
Okay, well, think about it this week as you go through the news. And if you want more information on the rise of Christian nationalism, NBC has a site where they have a number of different news blurbs about that. So go to NBC.
Also, the United Methodist Board of Church and Society has I believe it's this week.
It was this past week, but
Oh,
it was recorded on their site. They did it in conjunction with, I think,
But
the American Baptist.
You can get a good discussion there.
So what is happening is that there are some churches that are now called patriot churches, which have the view that religion should be integrated into the government and that the church is supposed to direct the government.
Isn't that how the beginning of The Handmaid's Tale went? Am I wrong remembering it?
So,
There is, and it's a couple years old now, but it may be worth revisiting. Right about the time of the latest rise of Christian nationalism, which would have been probably late 2020, maybe even early, well, no, it would have been 2017, 2018. A number of churches in the United States got together. The United Methodist Church, the Episcopal Church, the Presbyterian Church USA, the Wesleyan Church, which is a little bit surprising because they're more holiness-driven, and several other churches got together in a movement that's called Reclaiming Christ. And it was a way to reject Christian nationalism and say, this is not the Christ who we know. This is not the ministry to which we are called or to which Jesus was called. And it stopped short of sort of condemning one person in particular who was sort of promoting Christian nationalism, but did go as far as to try and continue to reclaim this idea that, and reclaim Christ as someone who would not support something like this.
So please don't think that this is partisan, because I don't want to make that sound partisan, because it is not. There are people on both sides of the aisle in our government who are good people and representing us honestly and fairly, and representing all religious groups as fairly as they can. But there are other people who have what seems to me like very narrow views, and those are the ones that we want to listen to carefully and make sure we don't get long information.
Yeah, I think their own agenda is the best way
Your
to
own
act.
agenda, yes. So, any other,
On a totally different subject, Bright Hope Laurel is having a coat drive, a winter coat drive, and there's a little insert in everybody's bulletin that I want to point out that, we here in the church, not just Methodist women, but all in the church, if we could possibly, help by bringing in clean winter coats for men, women, and children. And we've kind of, Judy and I have kind of pledged 20 jackets, heavy jackets. And so if we could ask for your cooperation, please. Judy said if we get them here to the church by October 9th, we can get them to Bright Hope in time for the distribution, because it's getting
cold, yes it is.
we need to do this.
Are they, is it supposed to be something washable?
According to
You know,
that
it's
news,
probably a good idea. I don't even buy things that need to be dry cleaned, you know, because I don't want to be frozen. So that's an excellent point. You know, but if you happen to have one or come across it, I wouldn't hesitate to get it.
Carla, you can donate your fur coat, it'll be all right.
So please help, please help.
And there is still a family in, Mars Hill area who was devastated by a fire. And Ann Croom is helping with getting, and they need coats, and they need winter clothes, so there's a lot of need out there.
And then those poor people in Florida and on the coast of the Carolinas who have just been devastated.
Good article in the paper today about the way that the governor of Florida